Hi, everyone. We're going to start today talking a little bit about how you can use a calendar to benefit your comprehensive school counseling program. So, I like to always remind everyone of the diamond. We have all of the directional elements of the diamond so you can see that everything is connected together. We have assess, manage, deliver, and then define. Um, Today, we're going to talk about what our calendars can do. So, they can identify grade levels, dates, and activities, of course, and you can distribute them to the appropriate people so that people know what you're doing and what your day looks like. Um, you can post them weekly, you can post them monthly, whatever works best for you. I'm going to give you some examples of weekly calendars in just a little bit. Um, you want to make sure that they're compared to your established goals for your time spent. So remember 80/20 is an is a ratio that we are striving um to meet. So 80% of our time in direct services with our students and of course stakeholders. So that's teachers, parents. So just think of it as face-to-face time. Um, it can actually be a great tool for evaluation to see whether or not you are actually looking more toward the 80/20 or if you're spending more time doing um, kind of administrative tasks, paperwork, management sorts of things. And then you can see really, really clearly what those priorities are if you look at how you're spending your time. They also will help you to really advocate for your job and show some leadership and planning in how you work. So, one really important thing for you to remember is that if people do not think that you have a pretty full schedule, then they're going to find things for you to do. So you want to make sure that your calendar is detailed and thorough, showing people what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and that you are showing people where you are at any given time so people can know how to find you, especially because you are very often going to be called upon in a crisis. So, a lot of times you are trying to figure out all of these different elements. You know, there are because we're a new profession, things look different in different districts. Your responsibilities and the mandates that are put on you are going to be a little bit different. In this class, we're really talking about an ideal program and something that you should strive for. So, that can sometimes be in conflict with the work that you're actually doing at the school. But if you do some of these things that we're teaching you, and especially a calendar can be really particularly helpful in this, it can help you to advocate for creating these developmentally based comprehensive programs that really meet the needs of all students. Because ultimately, that is going to benefit the numbers of your school much better. So we talked about this. The ideal use of your time is 80% of your time in direct services and 20% in indirect services. Again, that's an ideal. Your day to day may look a little bit different. So the reason that this is we're intentional about doing these calendars is because a lot of times um, accountability was just simply keeping track of whether, those individual meetings that they had. Remember, we talked about in this class and in the previous class, we talked about the fact that previous school counselors were really meeting the needs of just a few students. And so, what we're really trying to do now is meet the needs of all students. And so we're trying to keep track of those tasks and keep a record of those tasks. At the end of the year, you might be asked to really account for your time, and this will help you a great deal. You want to make this both available to the people in your school, but you also want to make sure that your advisory council knows what it is that you're doing on a weekly, monthly basis. So it's not just the what data, but it's the so what data too. So this is just a potentially helpful idea. If you're old school like me, and you're probably not, you can use highlighters, but if you're not old school, you can certainly do this electronically. You want to keep track of what you're doing, and you use particular codes. Classroom guidance or classroom instruction could be CG or CI. Parent consultation could be PC. Teacher consultation, TC. Individual sessions could just be IND. And if you're going to do individual time with students, you certainly aren't going to publish that student's name on a calendar that goes out to all of your stakeholders. You would just put IND. And then for your private keeping track, you could use initials to keep track of who you've seen and when. We'll talk more about that in documentation. Small group, it could be SG. And then you could have highlighters that show you what you're doing. You could also do a different color. And, if you're doing this electronically, you have unlimited colors available to you. But, and that green doesn't look so green, does it? You could also keep track of, and I recommend you do, keep track of those management areas, those systems pieces that you're doing. So setting aside some time to analyze your data, setting aside some time to have meetings with people outside of the school, those sorts of things. You want to keep track of those as well. So meet with your team to discuss your goals for the upcoming year and propose an annual calendar. I'm not going to give you an example of that, but I will be happy to share some links with you if you're looking for that. So annual calendars are going to be really topic focused. So, a good example is testing in the springtime. What is your role? So you may be the test coordinator. Obviously, that's not what we hope for you, but you may be. So that would take up a great deal of your time in the spring, potentially in the fall as well. But you may also be providing supports during testing. So your small groups may be based on anxiety around testing, working with kids to develop some strategies around testing, those sorts of things. So those are going to be things that go on your annual calendar. You'll find a lot of information on the school calendar, but then there are going to be things that you'll be in charge of. And of course, you don't want to forget that I think it's always the first full week in February's School Counselor Appreciation Week. So you'll want to put that one on your annual calendar as well. You can just put it in February. You're going to present the ideas to your administrator. Now, we've talked a little bit about, you've read a little bit about in your book, all those agreements that you're going to have with your administrative team, and putting a calendar together will help them to really see structurally what you're doing. And then you're going to participate in the master calendar planning. So if there are things like Red Ribbon Week, oftentimes that falls on the school counselor to organize. And so you'll want to be able to make sure that you don't have other big things going on during those times. It also really helps to advertise and increase program participation. So let me give you just an example. This might be an elementary school where you have a duty starting at 8 a.m. But you also are getting there at 7 a.m. and you have meeting times structured in. So MTG is going to be just meeting. You can be really specific about that if you want. And here we have individual and we have some initials. This would be an example you would keep for yourself, and you would just put IND on the calendar that you send out to others. So this person, because elementary schools, you actually often are getting in the classroom a whole lot more, spends pretty much her whole afternoon doing classroom guidance. You might want to call it classroom instruction, whatever works best for you. And then having department meetings, different duties, all of these things are recorded here. Now, high school, middle school, you're going to have maybe some other things. You might have a career center, peer helper, advisement. You might be part of teacher meetings or teacher team meetings. So this is going to look a little bit different. All of your responsibilities, you'll want to put in there. And when you're creating this for your comprehensive program, it's all going to be ideal. So what do you ideally see yourself doing? You'll create either a weekly calendar or a monthly calendar. I think a weekly calendar is really best for your comprehensive program, just so you can see what you're doing, particularly in the week. One thing I want to point out here is you'll see flex time reflected here. So it looks like every single thing is covered, but flex time actually gives you a little break. But it is still recorded as a time where you could schedule meetings with parents. You could schedule times to meet with teachers for teacher consultation. So all of those things are important to include.